Hey everyone, welcome to Ramblin About AI, episode 10. We're going to do a very quick one today, just to do a kind of like a recap on the last few weeks of the AI world. And we've both been really busy. I've been really busy working with AI, obviously. There's been a lot of stuff that's been happening. Philip, what have you been discovering over the last few weeks since we last spoke?
I think, the biggest thing has been just in terms of ours, even getting back to record this, is things just seem to keep getting a little faster as we go along. I think there was a sense for a long time that, AI was kind of showing us the possibility of the future with a lot of these models and sort of where they would be, but it wasn't necessarily tied into the workflows and the harnesses and things where you could easily realize it. It's like it was a lot of discovery. But I think now there's been so much work on those, that underlying kind of infrastructure the models operate in that now you can be really fast. I'm doing things, you know, basic, to be fair, basic statistical testing that you would have done as an analyst. But, to sit down and do it, it would take you a couple of hours, take this mix and try to see whether there's an effect on something else. That's kind of thing you can just say out loud now and it'll figure out. And the math is really strong.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
leaps and bounds forward.
the narrative has definitely been like, oh, AI is going to save you time. And people have been saying that for so long now. But now I think they say the proof is in the pudding. And now actually it's happening. People are seeing the results of AI and how actually these automated workflows can actually save money.
Yeah. It's really hard because the curve that you're on, right? The what's the hype curve where it starts out being really exciting, then you come down the other side and you come up the other side of it. Everybody's at different points on that journey, and it kind of depends on when you started. If you started when it wasn't very good, now you have it in your head that it's not very good. But if you've been like really using it all along, it's gone from being something that wasn't very good that everybody said was good to now it is very good and people are saying it's not good. It's sort of lagging the public perception and the model frontier. And I don't think people really appreciate how big that gap has gotten in terms of what it can do. And
I feel like people have come numb almost to how good the models are now. Like it's like 4.6 when it came out, Opus 4.6 from Anthropic. I remember that just changing my world. Like I could now build out fully Swift, iOS native apps. I was like, wow, this is crazy. But then 4.7 came out, I was like, cool. And now 4.8's come out, I'm like, cool. But it's actually like it's slow.
yeah, yeah,
It's so slow. Like people that are coming into the world now just kind of it's just oh yeah cool. They don't really realize how far these things have come along, as you say, and they just expect them to work a certain way. I guess it's like now, like on Spotify, they just can stream whatever artist they want. They can get that new album instantly that day. They don't even think about how the old days you have to go down to the CD store and buy like a CD or a DVD. So maybe it's kind of like that with the AI right now.
yeah. Well, I think that there's I read a really interesting article that was talking about frames and framers. It was under this idea that like AI is really good at executing in a frame. If you can say, this is what I want you to do, these are the tools to use it, this is how you get from point A to point B, figure it out, it can figure it out. But the framing is really where the value is. And with the way the models progress, it kind of works the same way as we'll sort of set out this frame and we'll say the frame is you have to be good at coding benchmarks. That's the frame we're kind of all decided to operate under now. And so they've optimizing to be really good at coding benchmarks. But it turned out along the way they got really good at a whole bunch of other stuff too. And a lot of the other stuff about what it could do before, it wasn't very good at that. And so in that frame, everybody sort of decided, well, it's good at coding, but it's not good at anything else. But I don't think that's true. I think it's stuck in the previous frame. Like our heads are stuck in the previous frame, whereas it's already thinking about the next one.
Yeah. In terms of like a recap, what would you say? I'll start the answer to this, but I was going to say what we should talk about what's new in the last month or so. I would say that like for me, I've experienced the world, the AI world, becoming a lot more accessible. I've seen a lot of accessibility. Like for something that was very much like you had to kind of be in the know, you had to be a developer, really. You had to sort of be following. You needed to know how to use the terminal.
Yeah.
You used to have to install Claude onto the terminal, or even before that, just being able to run a local environment. I remember when everything was all lovable and it was all hosted. Like these vibe coding tools were all hosted. You had to go on Lovable or Replit, And I remember the days when I was like, "Ah, you can run this locally," with Cursor, and started doing a lot more local work. But I was like, "Oh, but you still need to know how to set up your own local dev environment."
Yeah.
And then that all changed over the next few months, sort of, mid 2020, well, I guess middle of this year. Oh, yeah, it is the middle of this year. Beginning of this year, I've lost track where we are. Beginning of this year, it all became like a lot easier. And people that I knew who were getting into the AI world were building their own agents. Whether it was in a web browser or even installing core code locally on their machine, it was so much easier because it would just be like you had an installer, a binary you could install on your computer, and then the whole thing would run locally. So I would say that I've seen so much more of that now, like the accessibility piece. Like I say, Claude Code is very easy to install now. There's so many other tools that are easy to install. Even being able to create your own videos, like using AI now, that's pretty easy to do. So anyone coming into the world now is very much like, oh, I can do this. You don't need to have that know-how. Things that was the other the Claude Co-work and all these other tools, the design tool that Anthropic brought out, Claude does.
Claude
Well,
Design.
design.
Yeah.
Good
They're
name.
not
Good.
very creative with
Yeah,
their
good
naming.
naming conventions. They're all things you can download and install, and people are like, "Oh, cool! I was able to create my own slide deck for my presentation." So accessibility has been something that's been really I've seen happening a lot in the last month. On top of obviously all the new models that have been coming out, but like I say, the new models now don't seem to be the talking point. A lot of it is just about what you can do and how easy it is to do those things.
Yeah, I mean, there was one, Fable came out today. I don't know if you saw that. It was probably an hour ago, as of this taping. It's like the next from 4.8. And, the shift that I've seen, and this is a good illustration of that because it kinda starts to tip the needle, is that sense that, like, AI was about a subscription you bought, and then you used the models, and that was the mode. And I think what most people don't realize is that was a really heavily subsidized version of it. And I think with people that dig into the data realize it because in the screens you could look at with the usage, it would say, "Hey, use $1,000 worth of models, but you only have $100 per subscription." And we used to look at that and chuckle, but those chickens are coming home to roost now. Fable's the first time I've seen where they've come out and said, "We're going to put this in the subscription, but then we're going to take it out." Like, out of the subscription. Like, you can only use it in the API, and to my knowledge, they don't have many other models that you can only use in the API. And so, of course, what they said was, we'll take it out, we'll put it in the API, and then we'll find a way to put it back in the subscription later." Yeah, probably not. That's probably how they start training us to, we're gonna roll out models, and it's just gonna be in the API. You're gonna pay API pricing anymore instead of subscription pricing, and that's gonna get expensive.
Yes, and it's kind of ironic too because like they talk about like AI wiping out software as a service models. Well, their own software as a service models just got wiped
Is
out.
getting wiped out. No, it's like it's physician heal thyself, right? Like create thyself a moat here around what you're doing. I can't help but think every time I see Anthropic throw a Claude for design out that you could vibe code it. And that's the kind of thing we joke
It's
about
a
when
wrapper.
someone shows something is like, well, you could vibe code
It's
that.
just a wrapper.
So how's Claude going to come out and go, this is a groundbreaking new application of technology? Well, okay, but I could just create a version of that and point it at some other model. Like it's not really creating a moat. It's just trying to sort of like trigger a conversation. It's more like PR than it's like software development is PR. Is that a thing? Like you deploy Claude for Design, not because you actually want people to use Claude for Design, it's just you want people to feel threatened by Claude. It's like a threat to everyone that does something for a job.
Yeah, I mean, these are commercial enterprises, they're businesses, they want to make money. But it's just been interesting looking at, you see those memes about like the invoice from Anthropic for $100,000 in tokens. It's a real thing. And as you say, I think companies, especially those that are already paying out vast amounts of money for token usage because they've told their development team, go run with
Go
it,
use it.
go run with it. And
Leaderboard. Who's using the
I
most?
know.
People are using it a lot.
That was it, wasn't it? 6 months ago, companies are like, we're going to reward you for using AI. And then, of course, everyone in the team is like, sure, I use AI, $100,000 later.
Whoa,
No.
not like that.
But yeah, so there's definitely, companies are definitely seeing that cost now coming into their P&L. And it's now creating this shift towards, okay, how can we integrate these models into our workflows, but save money, a lot of money. And
Yeah.
and people are talking about local now, like local LLMs. And what's your experience? What have you been researching with that?
So I think that you'll see, and I think it's inevitable that you'll go here, but as the models hit points of diminishing return, previously the diminishing return was money spent in training versus the quality you got from it. that's actually pretty good now. Like they keep getting better. So now the constraint has been the cost that you're willing to spend for the quality model you get. The cost of you is the inference cost. That's what's now lumbering up. And I think when you see that shift of like things are slowing down, you start to see that look at the broader tail, at customizing models, at distilling it sort of that long. And the complex web of stuff that that's going to create is going to be really difficult to manage. And I've already started kind of thinking about like what those catalogs look like of models, not for the purposes of like building a model card on them, but for understand the role they play when you come out and say, hey, if you're using Claude Design, don't use Anthropic's Claude, use this other one because I've fine tuned it for something like that. How do you actually test that against each other? And how do you test that against the 30 that are going to come shortly after that when people realize that there's a market for taking these really sophisticated models that, to be fair, have sort of gone so far that they are too sophisticated for many cases, and then bring them back to a level where they're more relevant for one cases, and then what you do with that model and how you sort of weigh it against it. There's a many model world that is out there that we haven't touched yet because they've just kept getting better, and they just kept getting better in a way that it was cheap enough that you could just stay on the ride without really thinking about it. But now people are starting to think about it. And where do you go from there? Anthropic's not going to make their models cheaper. That's the opposite problem they have. They can't make it expensive enough. So it's going to call to somebody else to try to figure out how to optimize it. It's probably not going to be Silicon Valley because they're all on the same boat. Take the biggest model, make it big, get an AI data center. Whether or not you balance one on your PC versus one in the cloud, they don't want that. Look at how long it took Apple to figure that out. It wasn't because that they didn't have the engineering resources, because they need to work together with the inference providers, and the inference providers are incentivized to create that kind of experience. It's very natural.
And you mentioned subsidizing too. Like a lot of what we're seeing is subsidized. By these. The cost for this stuff is crazy.
It's hard to know. We'll get a little bit of picture of it when the real S1s come out for the IPOs, because they have a little more about unit economics. But not driverless cars, the taxi services, Uber started out the same way, really cheap, investors sort of subsidized, grew out. And then as they started to get scale, as they realized that, look, these costs are significant, the the economic cost of savings that we were benefiting from before have now caught up. Everything commoditizes itself, right? And so now it's commoditized. So now we need to raise the price. And so this AI is in that cycle right now. And it turns out that they can't build data centers as fast as they thought because nobody wants a data center.
And
And they're that.
I was reading today. I think I showed you the link about like this idea of like decentralized GPU sharing, like the idea that everyone can sort of rent out their servers or like can basically offer their servers that they're not the servers, they're GPUs that they've got. Because some people, my friend actually, he's got this really really powerful PC at his house with one of the best NVIDIA cards or whatever. And it's just sitting there. He said half the time not being used, but being able to sort of almost lease that out and being able to use that to as a decentralized way of providing compute for AI.
I
It
think
takes the
that's
power out of the hands of all these big data centers who are setting these costs for usage. I mean, it could be a way, it could be something we see more of.
I think that's brilliant. I think there's probably like a SETI at home waiting to be done.
Mm.
You remember that
Yeah, I
program? It was
remember
like
that.
offload processing to your computer. There's probably a network that your computer joins. Or like crypto mining, maybe that would be another metaphor for it, right? You join the pool, you're processing some of it, but you're not actually necessarily directly benefiting from it, but the pool you're contributing to it benefits and you get a cut of that. I could see pooling GPUs and things together to answer prompts. Sure.
And also like you think about like all the tokens, it's secure in a sense because all the tokens would be just shared across the board. So you would never have
Sure.
one cohesive prompt. It would be broken up.
Yeah.
I don't know how it quite
No, no,
works.
no. I think that's a great framing because actually there's a piece of infrastructure that I've been putting together that's try to match, people and LLMs in the same context where, the same extent that I would send a prompt to Claude, I want to know what someone else on my team would say the same thing. So you think that interview, that exchange process looks a little different. That interface looks different. But if you take that all the way out, you say like, well, if I'm going to do it that way, then why don't I just have my computer running and it'll look for prompts that need to be completed, and I'll send it to Claude. And you could sort of see like, well, now I'm going to do that. Well, I should get a cut of that, right? Because I orchestrated it. Well, now you do that. Why not do everything? Why not build your own version of that? And why not integrate your computer and just say, my computer is available. If you need your prompt completed by Claude, you can use my computer to do that, and I will give you back the answer to that. If you're It's just a tunnel at that point. And sure, why not add all those things together and build a super data center with everybody's computer based off of it that they're doing.
Well, one thing's definitely for sure over the last 2 months for me at least is that I've seen a ton of adoption with AI in terms of just going into software applications. Like the stuff that's getting built now is AI native. It's like it just there's no question about. It's not like a chat bot on the side, like we talked about. Where there's a sidebar with the chat. It's like heavily integrated now. It's part of the application itself. I've built at least 2 applications like that, and the one I'm working on right now is very AI centric. It's so just on the stuff I've been building has been like very AI centric, and I'm seeing it across the board now with other developers too. And just like not only are they using AI heavily to build these things, and also on that note, it's not even really being questioned now that how sm- how good these models are at coding now. It's almost just assumed that they're going to be very good. I mean, from what I've seen, I'm sure there's a lot of other engineers who like still very much questioning it, but it's almost like it's good enough now to be able to go into production because we have to scale quickly, because we have to build stuff rapidly. We're going to take that hit maybe on some of the potentially code quality, and because we need to ship, right?
Yeah.
There's just such this push to getting things shipped. But even then, I still think the code quality from what I've seen is still very, very exceptionally good. That's another topic, but
Yeah.
the point I'm making is that like, and you could speak to that, but the point I'm making is that I've seen now what I'm seeing is extreme AI is being extremely well used now in web development. I mean, across the board, and from enterprise through to startups, indie builders, heavily adopted.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think there's still that tension between, is it the high quality code? Is it scalable? Is it reliable? Is it all those things? And like, it's very hard to engage with that conversation because code quality is so subjective.
Sure.
And and when you think about what AI does when it takes things that were difficult and makes it trivial, it's usually that you then have to move up a level, right? And so if the argument was always who writes better quality code, humans or AIs, then the answer is probably not to have that argument. The answer is to say, okay, but what's the level above that we're trying to get to with high quality code? And how would you know if you were getting there? You really actually don't care whether the humans or the AIs write the code as long as it reaches this bar. And how well can you define that? And how well can you control the blast radius if that goes wrong? That's much more an architectural conversation. And so you can't go into a conversation about a piece of software and just say, should AI write the code or not? That's almost a meaningless question, right? The question is, what's the architecture of the application such that it can iterate on small pieces of it without risking the whole in search of some broader maximum?
Yeah, if you think about the end goal, though, for example, one of the projects I've been working on this year, his goal is to build this thing quickly because it's a new space. It's in education, and it's like this all happening, right? With especially using AI in the education space, he's trying to get this thing built quickly within like a few months, right? He wants to get it released before the next semester, and he's able to do it thanks to AI and thanks to some amazing product designer. Uh, but anyway, this thing he's going to be building it within like let's say a year or 6 months to a year of actually from his conception to the idea all the way to built to production. But then he also knows of a competitor who's very well established. He's also doing the same thing, but it's going to take them a lot longer because they have all the red tape and everything else, all the pieces in the middle. That's going to take longer. So he's able to build this thing quicker than they are because of AI and that agile nature. Is he going to win the game? Even though their code quality may be better because they have seasoned engineers and all this kind of stuff working as opposed to indie develop. So that's just an interesting way of looking at it. From a business perspective, he wins because he gets his product out to market quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the degree to which what you put out as a tangible thing is where the value is. And therefore, in doing that, you have then provided the value. It's not. It's the part where you were saying, this is how it should work, this is how it should flow. It's the part where he's saying, this is the different process that it needs to do. This is what the business needs to do. It's in all of those describing that you would put in specification. And anything that happens after that point, um, is just degrees of separation, right? The spec turns into the test, it turns into the code. The code turns into the test, it turns into the spec. Like, once you're actually working in an application, it's not any one of them. They're sort of bound together in this like trinity or threesome where like the spec and the code and the test have to agree, right? And you can change any of them as long as immediately after that you change the other three. And that binding is what ensures the quality, not the quality of the code that you wrote, in the overlapping nature of the fixed points that keep it on track. That's a much more interesting conversation to have than does it write better code than I do?
Yeah. So to summarize, AI is obviously in people's workflows. People, we're seeing it. We're seeing it produced now. We're seeing the stuff's coming out of it, and most of the, I think the general consensus is that it's good. It is good. What, just to summarize and wrap up, what would you say? What would you expect to see now over the next maybe month or so between our podcast now and the next episode? What would you expect to see in the AI world over the next couple of months? What do you think is going to be happening?
I think you'll see people wake up again. I think that would be like my takeaway is if you formed your opinion about AI's capabilities anytime before the beginning of this year, you need to come at it with a fresh eyes because it's totally different now. And I think you'll see more people making that leap. And I think you'll see this much bigger focus on we can't just assume that Anthropic and Copilot are just going to continue to blaze the trail for us. And all we have to do is follow along paying for whatever model they do. I think that era, if it's not already over, given that they rolled out Mythos and said we're not going to give it to anybody, so that's kind of there. Now they've come out and said we've got this out, but we're just going to leave a prescription for a little while and bring it over here. So Anthropic is saying you shouldn't rely on us to keep funding the future of this. And now people are going to start thinking about what do you do, and that's where I want to be because I think there's much more opportunity when people start stepping away from the big guys because they don't want to be that attached and now it's like, what do you step to? Well, it's everything else. How do you think about everything else? I think there's going to be a lot more conversation about that.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few weeks, and I guess Opus 5 when that comes out.
Yeah. So now I have to go test out Fable and see what the hell this new thing is they've thrown at us and what we're supposed to do with
All right,
it.
guys. Well, stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.